we'll get started. So, all right, we just want to welcome Dakota Duncan to the show today. Thanks for coming on here, Dakota. How about now?
Now I can. When you went to record it, it lagged.
Oh, okay. That's all good. I'll just edit, so I'll start over. All right, guys, we got Dakota on the show today. We want to welcome Dakota. Thanks so much for being on the show, Dakota.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, no problem, man. Hey, first off, if you just want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So right now, I currently oversee the BCFS Emergency Management Division. It's a nonprofit, a very large nonprofit, and actually comprised of 7 different nonprofits. And I have the privilege of leading their emergency management division, which is single-handedly one of the largest emergency management divisions in the country, just shy of FEMA. And in some aspects, we can even trump FEMA and some of their stuff. So major local government partner with them, as well as state of Texas, Louisiana, a bunch of others. So firefighter, paramedic by trade. And I had some great mentors and some really positive influences in my life early on, and I was able to rise through the ranks, and went from being a truck guy with Halligan tools to end up leading state agencies, and now working with a nonprofit.
That's so awesome. Yeah, and you guys, information for Dakota will be in the show notes. Just kind of seeing his journey through, whether it be through LinkedIn or whatnot, it's pretty remarkable and really cool to see just what all he's been through and what he's been a part of. And so I just say, just check that out, and just it's just really awesome what he's been able to do. But yeah, kind of with responding to disasters, it's kind of what we want to talk about today. And kind of like how that correlates to everyday life, leadership, and things that can go awry with anything we do. So kind of what is the worst disaster that you have ever had to face or have responded to, or anything like that?
Sure. Well, coming from Indiana, a lot of my initial response was tornadoes, straight line winds. We had some freezing damages that I was up in Michigan for one of those responses. And then I got into doing some work with some of the FEMA teams. I went to like Hurricane Sandy and a few others. But everybody's is different. And why it's their worst is always kind of interesting, I think, more so than just the worst. Harvey was a worst disaster for a lot of people.
Yeah.
For me, it was. I actually didn't even. I was in Texarkana during Harvey, and so we did some coordination work with the state there. For me, a lot of like the worst, when you think of like what takes a toll on you, it wasn't devastation and trauma and all that. For me, it's kind of the worst just because you see it from a different perspective, but it's also one of the most rewarding, and that is doing the unaccompanied minors, the kids that are coming across the border. When they have those influx and those surges, because of my agency's capacity and their experience, we do mass sheltering and public health. That's what we do. We're very good at it.
Wow.
So for me, that was I actually spent about 2 months down in the border, down the valley in Texas. I just got back. I don't remember, end of August, not too long ago.
Right.
I got to do 2 months down there. Large Type 1 incident. We had a few hundred people, about 1,300 kids in total, and it's crazy because you see what these kids come through, and you see their journeys, and you see firsthand what you don't hear about on the news. The care that we provide these kids is phenomenal. I mean, we've got soccer fields, full education services. I mean, it's crazy. And you want to be like, you just want to go out and like tell the world, like,
right.
Oh, crazy. Like these kids have it better than, any of us in the hotel.
Right.
I mean, it was so it was very eye-opening, but it's difficult to have such high political involvement and scrutiny, I guess, even from a national level. And they don't know what they're talking about. So it makes it very difficult to run those responses, because you see these kids that are, 13, 14 years old, parents of their own kids, and they're, you're pulling cactus needles out of their legs, and, they've got, the worst of the worst conditions. not to mention like the psychological toll it takes on them.
Right.
So for me, that was kind of my worst disaster, but it was also very rewarding to
Yeah,
see the outcome and the turnaround and the smiles and all
mhm,
that. So, like I said, everybody has different ones, and it
for
depends on
sure.
what you're involved in.
Yeah,
Obviously, you get into some trauma and stuff like that. You get into more of your tornadoes where you see entire towns leveled. Very depressing.
mm,
But for me, it has to do with the border crisis. Is probably one of my biggest ones.
yeah. Wow, that's yeah, and I would never have thought of as that
Yeah.
as like a disaster, but it is, and that's definitely a
Oh, yeah.
different perspective because it's just nothing that I've seen. I've seen the tornado. I'm from Indiana as well, like
Yeah.
and so yeah, that's a great perspective on it, and something a lot of people aren't aware of. But
Yeah.
like with that, and with like responding to natural disasters, um, kind of shortly right after it happened, so there's a lot of emotions going on, a lot of thoughts, a lot of just everything all over the place. How do you keep all those emotions kind of in check so you're able to do your job, so you're able to help those people and do what needs to be done without like freaking out? Like some people are like, I can't do it. I'll
Yeah.
go all over the place. So how do you keep that in check?
Um, some of it's just the personality type.
I
When
gotcha.
you talk about first responders and firemen, you talk about people that are type A personalities, people that can and do function very well in those environments. If
Right.
you're somebody that enjoys just knowing what to do and telling people what to do, you're going to do
Mm.
great. If you're good at it,
Yeah.
because everybody, and it depends. There's some really interesting studies when you get into like the psychological aspects of disaster and post-disaster in community. You talk about, the initial rush and high and then the
Yep.
traumatic drop, and then you go into the community rebuild, and then it's a post-depression, and about, I mean, it's like a year and a half long cycle. So we even see for some of the responses that we go into that are recovery efforts, economic recovery, you
Right.
see more of a disaster in the post-depression of a
Mm.
city or a community that's fallen kind of apart and scattered and loneliness and isolation. Um, so it's very interesting when you talk about the emotions and then the psychological impacts that disasters have, because it depends on where you're coming into the disaster. If you're in immediate response
Right.
mode,
Yeah.
you have to essentially, and it's not probably the most healthy. You have to really compartmentalize that, and you have to separate yourself from the chaos because you're there to fix it,
Right.
and people
That's your
expect
job.
you to
Yeah.
fix it. If you come in and you're the responder and you're going crazy, like
Yeah.
you're the problem.
Right.
Um, so anyway, being able to just kind of, I would say, disassociate yourself a little bit.
Okay.
But the important part is you have to come back around and deal with that later, and a lot of
Yeah.
guys, and that's when you get into a lot of PTSD issues and
For
stuff.
sure. And that's kind of was going to lead me to another question. Like, so I'm sure early on it was kind of rough to keep that all locked down and then deal with it later. I'm sure, or at least for me, it would take a while for me to figure out how to deal with that. How did you learn to deal with that, or how do you deal with those keeping those emotions in?
Well, I learned the hard way, like everything
Okay.
else I do.
Yeah.
I started as a fireman, as a medic, and I
Yeah.
was young and I was extremely gun ho, and I was working 3 or 4 different jobs full time, and so I was constantly in different environments, and I had a lot of great experiences, and I didn't have the maturity at that age to deal with what I was doing with. So
Hmm.
I would just put it down, respond, come in as the hero, close the door, and leave, and I'm good,
Right.
rock star. And it took a toll on me that I didn't initially recognize. A lot of times you don't feel bad. You don't like, you're like, I was great. Like not even bothering me. And
Right.
then a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, it starts to compile.
Yeah.
And for me, a lot of that was growth for one. But I read a ton. And so I started reading a lot about, dealing like with some anxiety and dealing with psychological behaviors and dealing with emotions and that
Hmm.
emotional maturity, and that was something that once I started to work through that and recognize and have that awareness of what I was feeling, what I was doing, and how I was acting, and how it affected my decision making, you start to work through it in a really healthy manner.
Right.
Um, it just you have to be cognizant of it at first, and I wasn't, and it snuck up on me.
Oh
And
yeah.
doing that, I had to, you know, um, take a hard look in the mirror and do some reevaluation and kind of figure out what I was doing. And um, there's not really an easy answer, I guess.
Right. No, and there's definitely, I mean, even in the real world, like people deal with stressors all the time
Mhm.
that they might compartmentalize and never deal with. It could be the loss of a loved one. It could be just a financial burden. It could be who knows what. And a lot of times people play that off like, oh yeah, I'm good, or oh yeah, I'm doing good. Oh, I'm doing okay. Like, and they just stick it back there and they don't deal with it. um, from your experience, like what have you seen from people who don't deal with that healthily? Like, has it, like, have they just fallen out of the game? Like, what have you noticed?
So, and part of kind of learning some of those lessons the hard way, I actually had a lot of friends that have killed themselves
Mm,
in the line of duty. I actually two in the past 6 months.
jeez,
Um, fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, top of their game, and just completely checked out.
man.
And it's difficult when you work by these people, 12-hour shifts, 3 days
Mm-hmm.
a week. You spend more time with them than you do with your own family.
Right,
And it becomes very difficult to deal with. So I've seen a lot of that because I've lost a lot of good friends,
right, man.
um, and even some good mentors to it.
Mm,
So there's it plays a lot on your growth, I guess, in the profession, whether it's public safety or emergency management or whatever it is. When you go through that and you go through it every year,
mm,
6 months, every 6 months, you're
right.
putting that black thing across your badge. Like, you
Mm,
become extremely desensitized to it,
mm,
and you kind of shut down. And for
yeah,
me, I went through that, and I had to, you're either going to do one or two things. You're either going to succumb to the pressure and you're going to just shut down and you're going to be miserable and you're going to be crushed, or you're going to use it
right,
as fuel and you're going to make something and do something with it. and
for sure.
and being the fighter type that I am, I
Yeah,
use it as fuel, and I use it to my advantage. And I started learning about, you know all the different things, and it started shining that light into my life, which is painful, by the way,
mm,
because people
yeah.
don't want that.
Nope,
You don't want to know all of the hurt. You don't want to know all the
absolutely,
things
right.
that you have, and you start to really peel that back and deal with those emotions, and it's just life changing. It really is.
Yeah. And that's a huge, huge topic that I think is getting more light is the just like the mental health and the
Yeah.
PTSD and um, being okay to open up about what we're struggling with, especially men in general. Not that women haven't struggled with opening up, but you hear more men have
Sure.
a hard time doing it. And I think it's finally coming more to light. And it's a real shame when you have conversations or you put something out there like on social media and you hear people respond to it in a negative way, like, oh, that's just
Yeah.
the culture's getting so weak, they're soft for dealing with it. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, they're so close-minded and they
Add
don't
insult
see
to
the
injury
problem.
there.
Yeah, it's like there's still people that way, which is sad
Sure.
because we need to really, I think, focus on that, the health, the mental health and how it affects people, and we're hearing more about it all the time now. And so
Yeah.
yeah, being able to kind of see that and
And
find the
I
need for
think some
help.
of the things that we respond to are worse than they were before. I mean,
Mm,
you get more domestics and, more, assault and batteries. You get
mm,
more violent crimes and
jeez.
traumatic that you didn't have
Right.
all that much. Um, even just some of the terrorist stuff, the bombings and stuff like that, like you didn't have that 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Right.
So those professionals that are dealing with that are older are
Hmm.
struggling to deal with some of the new challenges that they're
Yeah.
facing, and so are the young ones that are coming
Yeah.
into it too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that older generation definitely has a harder time opening up just because that's how they're raised. I mean,
Sure, sure.
take it,
Absolutely.
get your nose down, grind to it,
Yeah,
and deal with it internally. And yeah, I think there's a slow change, but yeah, I think we see so much more traumatic things that we have to deal with as a culture in general now that
yeah.
is bringing more of that to light. And so I think like leaders in general have to realize that, because even in corporate setting, you have people ending their lives, unfortunately, because of the stress of life and
Yeah.
not knowing how to deal with it. So do you have, and this might be outside your wheelhouse, but any knowledge, any, why is it important for a leader to have the pulse on their groups, their teams, so they can see the possibilities, the possible signs of these mental distresses?
Well, one, that's your job as a
Mm,
leader. Your job is to take care of your own people.
for sure.
And, especially if you're younger and you're supervising people that are older than you, it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
And I had that. In fact, fortunately, which was harder, but fortunately, everybody that I've ever led has always been older than me. And so I just came up with how to like figure that out and how
Yeah.
to talk with them and communicate with them in a manner that one didn't just shut them down, but
Mm,
actually, they gained respect for you.
absolutely.
And so, leadership, you have to be constantly attuned to that. You always have the distractions that I call. You're talking budgets and your grants and
Yep.
IT issues. You have those things. It doesn't matter what your industry is, whether you're in banking or disasters or
Right.
it doesn't matter. Teacher, you have to be in tune to what's going on because you're going to miss something.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, one of the guys that I have the privilege of working with now, his two big things for why leaders fail: lack of situational awareness and failure to act.
Wow.
And I see it over and over and over again.
Yeah. The
But
tunnel vision.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or you just don't want to see it. You don't want to deal with that issue because you don't
Blinders.
either, yeah, you don't know how to deal with it, or you don't, it's not interesting, whatever it is. Like, and I have things as a leader and I lead teams. Like there are things that I do that like that are going on that I don't want to deal with them. And I know they're there, like that lingering. I know there's a lingering relationship issue going on or something, and I don't want to deal with it. And
Right.
you know, you have to suck it up,
Yeah.
and you have to deal with it, and you have to get good with dealing with conflict,
Yep.
and you have to get good with dealing with uncomfortable situations. And as somebody who's literally dealt with uncomfortable situations as a career, like that's
Yeah.
what I do, and I
Right.
love it. I didn't realize until about a year ago how much I don't like dealing with interpersonal conflict.
Mm.
I have that people pleasing type, thing. And,
Right.
and so I started working on that, and it's helped a lot in my leadership to be able to talk to people about uncomfortable situations in a
Yeah.
manner that's not combating or disruptive, but it actually encourages them to open up or talk about it, or however it needs to get
Yeah.
resolved.
Play out for sure.
Yeah.
So what would you say, like, for leaders out there listening, like, how can they go about maybe dealing with emotions, but also keeping that pulse on their teams, to
Mhm.
be aware of what's going on and deal with these conflicts? Are there, you got anything, tips that you use to help you or that
Yeah.
you've learned along the way?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One, you actually have to care, and you actually have to
Right.
put
Yeah.
forth
True.
effort.
Yeah.
It sounds simple and silly, but you literally actually have to care about the people that are entrusted to your care, and you have to care about their well-being and their
For
life,
sure.
and
Yeah.
you have to know what's going on with them as a person, not just how they perform as a job
Mm.
and or as an employee. And so I think that's one of the big ones. You have to take an initiative to take interest. That's the other one. And I would say, the other thing that I've constantly figured out is that you have to continue your own growth.
Mm.
You have to make sure that you're growing your employees and your people
Yep.
that are trusting your care, but you also have to make sure that you're growing, and you have to be reading, and you have to make the time for it. I mean, the last year, I think I've probably been working 10 to 12-hour days
Yep.
and the weekends plus deployments, plus I'm trying to do investment stuff on my own time. I mean,
Right.
it's a constant struggle, and
Yep.
it's more so of a struggle now for me to find time to read and stuff, and to work on that development than I did before when I worked on a fire station for 24-hour shifts and I
Yeah.
could
Right.
book in a shift.
Exactly.
So yeah, you have to take the initiative for it. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, really, yeah, being intentional about your time and how you're reaching out to people instead of just keeping it to yourself. I mean, we've talked about, or I've talked about before, is community and how it's huge, and being able to just be there for one another, and seeing those changes in either emotions or just
Yeah,
expressions. But the big one you hit on is just the self improvement. I think that's huge. And I've come back to that so many times in things I've been reading, and things I listen to, other podcasts, video series, things like that. Like, it's so important what we put into ourselves.
sure.
So we're able to put out. I know, just with my faith and stuff, like hearing so many times in Sunday school and stuff, like, we're trying to help and love on other people so much. If we don't fill our cup, it becomes
Yeah.
empty. We're not really truly helping anyone else, and it just continues to drain us until we're dry.
And
And
you know,
so,
a lot of that I think comes down to learning how to have boundaries and
mm,
appropriate boundaries, whether
when to
it's
say no, yeah,
yeah, yeah, and I mean, even like there's just certain things. Sometimes you have to put boundaries, even with family and
yep,
friends that are healthy.
yeah,
You have to determine what's toxic in your life or who's toxic, and you got to
yep.
put appropriate boundaries. Otherwise, you're just going to constantly be drained.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's huge. Is And people, I think, again, it's a culture shift. I think it
Yeah.
used to be, "Oh, we can't be selfish. That's selfish. If we have time for ourselves, or we should be." But if we're giving everything we have to everyone else,
Mm.
eventually something's got to give, and it'll be us. We're gonna end up. It's gonna break us. And so, yeah, coming back to that self help, self kind of fulfillment to be better people, be
Mm.
pencil leaders, so we can reach out and really affect a change in the world, I think is huge.
Yeah.
Um, and so that kind of how is what we are trying to end the show with, is kind of correlating back to the pencil leadership and the
Mm.
5 traits of that. Um, if you don't know what those are, if you're new to the show, they're in the description. They'll be on the website. You can check it out. But the first one we're kind of going to go over is just like a pencil. It can't work unless it's held by someone else. So throughout your life, have you had a couple mentors or catalysts, people who have really helped propel you to where you are today?
Yeah, yeah. I've had a few good ones. I think the bad ones are actually a little bit better. And
Yeah.
again, they either crush you or you'll learn more. But I've learned more from bad leaders than I have
Okay.
from good leaders.
Yeah.
You know, obviously with some of the technology stuff now, we can have mentors that are virtual. You
Yep.
can have people that you follow that are just positive influences. I follow people, a lot of people that I follow, like online or social medias or podcasts and stuff is financial.
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
the Taco Pays, your Grant Cardones, your
Hey,
investment,
Grant. Yep.
your leadership guys. I follow a lot of those guys, and that's where I learned a lot of my financial investments and what
Nice.
I want to do. I've had great leaders. I've had some great guys that I've worked with,
Okay.
that have been older guys that have kind of took
Yep.
me, because it's kind of a like a nurse eat nurse kind of thing, doggy dog,
Yeah.
like it's that. And so you get a lot of I see it all the time. You see a lot of guys that are really ambitious and they're really gun ho, and they just get crushed because they're
Mm,
like, you're doing too much. You need to calm down.
right.
And then you get some that are like, don't listen to these clowns. Do what you need. Do this. Do this. Do this. And they actually propel you. Um, and I think there's probably a little too many names that I mean I couldn't even list everybody by name. And if I did, unless you knew who they were, it wouldn't matter. Um, but yeah, a lot of positive influence. But I've learned a lot more from the bad leaders and what not
Yeah.
to do than I have from the good
And
ones.
that kind of goes into the second thing. Like, as a pencil, to be able to be used correctly, you have to sharpen it. So you
Yeah.
have that point. And so we go through things that are uncomfortable, they might hurt, rough times that shape us and better us in the future, but at the time, are not so easy to get through. Or some of those leaders, obviously, is there anything else that sticks out to you that kind of was kind of painful but really helped you grow?
Yeah. I've learned a lot about the grind,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
putting your nose to the grind and grinding
Yeah.
every day. And for me, I do well on that kind of.
Okay.
I do well in the military with it. I did well, and I even do it now. Like I get up at 4 a.m. and I go to the gym
Nice.
and I hit it every day, or at least now I'm going 3 times a day. But
Yeah.
every time I go to the gym, I hit it and I hit it hard and I do it and I do better and I do more weights and to me that's just it's that grinding moment. It's where you're, no matter what you're doing professionally, financially, whatever, in the gym, it's kind of the equalizer for me. Um, that's still where I'll go to the gym, t-shirt, shorts, tennis shoes, and I grind as hard and I work and I work and I work. And then I go to work and I put on a three-piece suit and I sit in meetings and go through budgets and So for me, that's kind of that. That's my work moment. But I have to
Yeah.
incorporate that into my routine because if I
Yep.
don't, you get complacent or you get lazy or you make excuses. And so for me, I have to incorporate some of that hard grind into my daily life
Mm,
just to keep me going, to keep me centered, to keep me moving,
absolutely.
and to keep that, in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, adding I mean, that almost like that good stress kind of people
Yeah.
talk about into there, keep you sharp, absolutely. Um, and so the third one is with pencils, there's erasers, obviously. So if you make a mistake, you can fix it. So has there been a time that and they're gonna get transparent with you, have you made a mistake that
Oh yeah.
you're able to probably fix, but like you learn from it?
Yeah.
Obviously, we all
Yeah.
make mistakes, but
A ton.
yeah.
A ton. Um, I always loved the saying that in order to be, old and wise, you have to be young and dumb. And I definitely live that to the max.
Right.
But yeah, no, growing up, I did a lot of things, a lot of stupid things that I did. Young fireman, paramedic, I was real cocky and made some bad calls. Thought I knew what I was doing or thought I, was making the right choice, and turns out
Yeah,
you're not. And
right,
you got to swallow that pride, and you got to accept that.
for sure.
And fortunately, I had one. It was an EMS run back when I was in Indy, and it it was a minor thing, and I played it off, and obviously can't go into too much details with it, but it
Right.
was it was like a cardiac run. I was like, there's it's fine, it's not a big deal, and I ran the 12, did all the tests, did everything I was supposed to do perfectly, didn't catch a small detail that should have tricked my thought process, and
Yeah.
I took comfort in the fact of knowing what I was doing, um,
Mhm.
and I did. I just missed a small detail because of that, and and I was wrong. And they had a couple of doctors that informed me I was very wrong on that.
Yeah.
And so now even like if I look at it modern, I reread it. I do it when you talk about like reading like a 12 lead or like an EKG strip, right? There's a way you do
Mm.
it. You don't just look at the image and look
Right.
for this certain lines.
Yep.
Correct ways. You actually there's a method for measuring the size and the rhythm and durations and all that. And I didn't do that. I looked at it and I was like,
Uh,
normal sinus rhythm,
yeah.
couple out of P waves or whatever is fine, and
Right.
it didn't be a block. And fortunately, it wasn't life threatening
Okay.
at the
Yeah,
time.
thankfully, yeah.
Yeah, and so it just kind of you start to get a
Brought
little
you
too
back down to earth a little bit.
yeah, and it
Yeah.
just reset me. And so now anytime I look at it, and I don't even practice anymore, but anytime I look at a 12 lead, I do the exact, like I go through the whole thing every time because there's that one moment that I
Right.
missed and that could have been bad.
Yep.
And, again, you miss those details and
Oh,
then you
yeah.
can't do the small things right. You can't do the big things right. So,
Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah, definitely. And it's cool how thankfully that moment didn't turn out any worse than it did, but how it kind of brought you to be more detail oriented
yeah.
and take your time a little bit. So
Yeah.
that's cool. Yeah. I'm glad it turned out well for sure. Um so yeah, and with that, like going through life, like we get beat up mentally, physically, spiritually, however it is. So there's always signs of wear and tear. Same with a pencil, use over time. Gets nicks, it gets color coming off of it. The eraser gets pretty low and sometimes dented. But the most important thing's inside. It's that lead that can
Mm.
leave the mark. So what in your life is a value or a character trait that you really try to focus on or um, portray in your job that you won't waver from?
Um, it's, and kind of leading to what I was talking, a lot of it for me is humility.
Yeah.
You know, um, I've done very well for my age, and
Yeah.
I'm in a position that most people won't get to.
Right.
Um, and so for me, it's constantly just smiling, constantly getting to know people, and just not letting it get to your head. Like
Yeah.
it's just always humility, and people. can relate to that. They can
Mm,
relate to somebody that's genuine and that will talk to them and take an interest in them. And people know when you're not being genuine. Like they know when
yeah,
you're making small talk or you don't
for
really care.
sure.
You know, so for me, that's one of my biggest things. Like I can take comfort in some of the skills and stuff. But for me, it's maintaining that humbleness.
Nice.
Maintaining humility and just you know not. Sometimes you just can't take yourself too seriously. Sometimes you have to
Yeah.
laugh at when you
Yeah.
speak something up, and you have to do it in front of people
Yeah,
to kind of allow them to know that you can joke about yourself a little bit if
for
you make a
sure.
mistake. I actually did one yesterday. Even I had my core team in my room, and there's 5 of us, and we're sitting there, we're going through some stuff, and I did something really stupid, and I don't even know what it was, and I was just like I pointed it out, and like okay, that's what I'm doing today
Yeah,
apparently. So, all right,
nice.
and so, they got a good laugh out of it, but allow them to
Just
realize that I didn't do
numb,
myself.
yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of it helps loosen that environment, the culture up a little bit.
That's awesome. Yeah, humility I think is huge. It just makes you more real to people. I mean,
Yeah,
because we're all at different positions. Someone's always going to be better than us, but there's so many people looking towards us, whether we know it or not. And if they can see some sort of like, wow, he is like a normal guy. I mean, he
yeah,
might have a lot of financial success or career success or whatever it may be, but like, oh
sure.
wow, he just made fun of himself for tripping on that crack in the sidewalk, so
Yeah,
whatever it
yeah,
is, like that's cool. And it really brings us down to earth and helps a lot of people kind of learn better from us, I
yeah,
think. And
yeah,
so,
absolutely.
yeah. And so I think that's a huge, huge one for sure. Um, and so that inside, that what keeps us going, what keeps us grounded, I think is huge. And like a pencil though, with the lead,
Mhm.
it's obviously there to leave a mark.
Right.
And so what would you say would be one positive way you want to leave the world better, or leave a positive way to leave a way to leave a positive mark on the world?
Yeah. You know, I really don't know.
Yeah.
That's one I've been trying to figure that one out myself anyways.
Right.
And there's the usual like, yeah, I want to be really good at what I do, and I want to have a good name for it, and I want to encourage other people to do it. And I guess for me, um, probably one of the bigger ones is I just want to inspire people.
Mm.
Like
Yep.
I had some people that kind of took some mentors that really took some leap of faith
Mm.
in me, and they really invested in me, and they kind of went out on a limb, and they had some courage to do that. Um, and you never forget them. Like
Yeah.
those people have given me the shot that nobody else would. Um, you have to get comfortable with rejection. I mean, that was something I struggled with, kind of branching into this emergency management deal from the public safety response side. It's very hard to get into. It's extremely competitive, and
Hmm.
I had a few individuals that they just really, I don't know, bad judgment. I don't know. They just
Yeah.
gave me a shot. They gave me the opportunity and the tools to be successful, and I never let him down.
That's awesome.
That was my whole thing. I would never let him down, and I still don't, and I still keep in contact with him.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to build trust, and people have to be able to trust you. But for me, those people gave me the opportunity, and they gave me inspiration that I could do something with my life, and that's just something I want to be able to pass on.
That's
I
awesome.
think there's a lot of people that go through life riding the brakes.
Yeah.
They're too afraid to take the chance. They don't make the move. They don't take the new job. They don't do the investment that everybody tells them they shouldn't do. Like they don't do the things because they're afraid, or they don't
Yeah.
believe in themselves, or they don't realize that even if you fail, you tried.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm gonna die on my deathbed before I say I wish I would have done something. Because if
Right.
I want to do it, I'm gonna do it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna find a way to do it, and I
Yeah.
am not gonna go and say I wish I would have taken that shot, or I wish I would have tried, or what. I'm not doing that. And
Absolutely.
I think that has a lot to do with it.
Man, that's great. And that's like, I'm right there with you. Like that's why I wanted to start Pencil Leadership and get this going, and get my brand going, to try to reach people with a motivation, with tools, with education that they can use and take out and improve their own lives, improve the
Yeah,
lives of their families, and see that impact ripple on. And so yeah, I think That's a really great one. It's just kind of giving back like you want to do. That's so awesome.
Yeah,
But well, we appreciate you being on the show today, man. I
I love
hope
it. Thank you
we
for having me.
yeah, no problem. We got some great information. I hope that everyone can take something from today's talk. I think they can. Absolutely. Again, we're humbled and thankful for you to be here on the show.
Appreciate it.
If you want to reach out to Dakota, his information will be in the show notes below. Just check him out on social media, and um, look forward to how you're going to impact the world going on, man.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem.